Okay, what am I putting in my overnight oats? Blueberries, raisins, some chia seeds, and steel-cut oats. Add in some oat milk, and in the fridge you go. Oats are some of the healthiest grains you can put in your body. They're a great source of fiber, and they contain lots of vitamins and minerals, as well as antioxidants. Studies have shown that oats can help lower cholesterol, which in turn can lower risk of heart disease. Oats are also a versatile grain. You can make so many healthy things with oats, and they're gluten-free. Now if they could just make oat pizza. Oh wait, there's a recipe for that too.
Pizza's ready. Order up.
As vital as oats are for the human body, they're also an important crop for farmers.
Oats are very important to U.S. agriculture because they occupy a space that the other cereals don't occupy, which is essentially a healthy food for people that are worried about health issues such as cholesterol and issues like that. Oat production in U.S. has been declining because majority of it has moved to Canada, but growers are realizing and industry is realizing that it's really important to bring it back to the United States.
That's Shahryar Kianian, research leader at ARS's Cereal Disease Lab in St. Paul, Minnesota. Oats used to be a staple food in America, but the availability of other grains and cereal crops have diminished its value. Recently, however, consumers have started seeing the health benefits of this cereal crop, and demand has risen. Farmers, too, are seeing the benefits of growing this crop.
It's relatively easy to grow, except usually because of how it's treated as a commodity, tends to be grown in marginal lands rather than the main agricultural fields. It's a great crop for rotation because it helps with soil health and soil stabilization. Because of that, I think most growers are now realizing the importance of having oat in their field and in their production cycle rather than putting it on marginal fields.
Oats are grown not only in the upper Midwest, like Minnesota, the Dakotas, and Canada, but in the Southwest as well. No matter where it's grown, oat farmers are dealing with a nasty disease called crown rust.
Crown rust, the way it was named, I always say, is that if you're wearing a jean and you walk in the field and you come out and feels like you rubbed your pants against a rusty iron, that's the rust fungus. It looks like rust, it behaves like rust. It's a major disease of all of the small grain cereals, wheat, barley, and oats. It affects the leaves, and essentially what it does is destroys the leaf, so the leaf is not photosynthesizing well, so essentially reduces the yield on the crop. So more rust you have, the lower your yield is. I have a picture that I use it as a backdrop on my computer of a field that is, the farmer is plowing it under, and you can see the rust coming out of the back of his machine because it's so bad and rusty that he couldn't even use it for forage, so he's plowing it under.
Crown rust is a major problem for growers. How big? A few years ago, the state of South Dakota, which is one of the larger oat-producing states, they reported a 50% loss due to crown rust. 50%! That's just not sustainable for farmers. The Cereal Disease Lab here in St. Paul develops oat lines that are resistant to crown rust. This disease is highly variable, meaning it could change rapidly, requiring constant vigilance.
Part of our work is we actually go across the United States and collect rust samples and test them in the lab to see what are the populations like. With oat crown rust, close to 90% of them are unique. So that means if you pick 10 isolates, bring them back and check them, 9 of them are individuals.
As the disease evolves, resistance to it lessens over time. A new oat variety may last 3 to 5 years before it no longer becomes resistant to crown rust. Some pesticides work well against crown rust, but pesticide applications can be expensive, and Kianian noted that many oat farmers are looking to go organic to meet consumer demand for healthy and safe food. Crown rust also spreads wide and fast.
Rust doesn't know boundaries, and it moves by air. Usually it starts off in the southern part of the U.S. because you have the crops getting greener faster, and then the wind just blows it north, and it just keeps moving farther north and goes across the border to Canada. They have the same problem, they have the same issues.
For decades, researchers looked for ways to eradicate crown rust, but because of its high variability, a different research angle was needed. Instead of trying to eradicate the disease, Kianian decided to negotiate with it.
Hey, crown rust, what's it going to take for you to lay off these oats a little bit?
Yep, you heard me, negotiation. The next best thing to getting what you want.
What we have focused on for the past 20 years is essentially what we call lines that are slow rusting, or I'm happy and you're happy kind of paradigm. Essentially, lines get rust, but do not get as much of the yield loss. So the fungus is happy, it's growing on that plant, but not too much, just enough so that the plant is also happy and growing.
The Cereal Disease Lab released 2 new oat lines in 2023. These new negotiated lines are already getting a lot of attention from breeders and the oat industry.
U.S. public programs, the university, which tends to be the major oat breeding programs, have picked it up. Canadians have picked it up and started breeding with it. And there are a couple of private companies that have picked it up.
With these new lines helping to reduce crown rust, Kianian and his colleagues are setting their sights on combating other oat diseases, such as stem rust, as well as developing new oat varieties with higher yields and more consistent seed size, which aids in the milling process. But make no bones, or oats, about it. These new negotiated varieties could be a game changer for the oat industry. Kianian and his colleagues are also developing additional lines to diversify the genetics of oat so that the fungus cannot easily evolve and overcome the few currently in use.
It is satisfying when you're helping out. Our mission as USDA is to help the public. So it's really nice to see the public being helped. Everybody is getting what they need. I love oats. It's a great breakfast. You have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, you're satisfied all the way through lunch, no stacking in between.
In our next episode, we'll get into the weeds with a common foe that affects nearly every farm in America.